Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is one of those games that intends its players to go in blind, which is useful for me since I hate recording long videos. I recorded the tutorial area, but I think I'll just play trailer footage over this audio too, better to be safe than sorry and all that. As the title says, Tears is everything Breath of the Wild did, only dialed to 11. Let's talk about the things people didn't like about Breath. First, the lack of dungeons. I'm happy to say that Tears has them, and they're a cross between traditional temples and the divine beasts. You're given a number of objectives to complete in each one, and each one has a vaguely defined path leading to it, but you can do them in any order. You'll be happy to know that the bosses are also much more unique than the repeating blights in Breath. Weirdly, I felt that the difficulty of the dungeon was inversely proportional to the challenge of boss. I'm curious if others agree, and if this was intentional. It's a neat way of ensuring each dungeon matches a different type of playstyle. Oh, and speaking of bosses, Tears also has a much better final boss. It was incredibly challenging, but it really felt like a grand battle and a clash between talented opponents. I absolutely loved the vibe, and actually there were a lot of set pieces throughout. Age of Calamity left its mark on Tears, clearly. Next is weapon durability. Weapons still break, but the new fuse mechanic lets you add something to your weapon to buff and add some longevity to it. And in the worst case, you can attach an almost broken weapon to a new one and get some extra life out of it that way. Speaking of, you will be using fuse a lot, as weapons are far weaker this time around, even later in the game. Finally, the story. I love Tears' story. I can't say much beyond what's been shown in trailers, but it's one that starts simple but turns into a surprisingly fleshed out affair as events progress. As with Breath, you can do as much of the main story as you want, but I recommend completing all of the main quests for the best experience, especially when it comes to emotional impact and giving satisfying conclusions to the main mysteries. One common sentiment I saw post-Breath was people wishing it had traded some of its openness for a better story, and I think Tears did that. The tutorial is far longer, for example, and you're pushed to see the full plot here far more than in Breath. I think this was the right call, but maybe you'll disagree. As with Breath, the main plot diverges into side stories involving the different races. Unlike Breath, however, all of these stories are fairly well done and act as coming-of-age tales for their respective protagonists. I don't think I'm the only one who thought the writing quality was lopsided before. As for Zelda, she continues to prove herself the best iteration of the character. Unfortunately, she's not playable, but here more than ever I really wish she was. Her story unfolds in the background as in Skyward Sword, and the glimpses you get of it are so tantalizing that I wish this had been her game instead. If Koei Tecmo is planning another Hyrule Warriors, I hope they make one purely about her and save Link for a post-game unlockable or something. As for Tears itself, while Hyrule is mostly the same, the terrain is altered by the inciting event of the plot, and there have been enough changes to the kingdom's status quo that it still feels fresh. There are a lot more people now, and it's clear that many years have passed since Breath of the Wild. Stables work differently, some communities have evolved, others have fallen into disarray. Enough has changed that even Breath players will be surprised, I think. Link has completely new abilities this time around too. The main is Ultra Hand. It's essentially an improved magnesis that also lets you combine objects to solve puzzles and even craft vehicles, which are the main feature of Tears. The other abilities feel a lot more situational than Breath's ones though. The lack of bombs in particular definitely hits hard at points. Sometimes the game will give you bomb flowers or rocks and swords to craft hammers out of, but it really felt to me like there was meant to be a new bomb rune at some point in development. There's a greater learning curve to the new abilities as well, with Ultra Hand in particular being quite finicky until you get the hang of it. That goes for the tools you get after completing each dungeon too, and it doesn't help that they're weaker than Breath's blessings as well. Nintendo took the open-air approach in Breath and ran with it with their mission structure. Now, instead of getting clear directions for quests, most times you'll only get a vague hint, and even the map won't show you where to go. While it feels good to join the dots yourself, and the game offers multiple paths via side quests and plain exploration to progress the story, I wish there was a way to get hints if you need them, not only for the impatient ones, but also those who can't binge play and will take breaks between sessions. Tears is too new for that now, but I wouldn't be surprised if we hear people complain about this in the future. Apart from that, pretty much everything in Breath is also in Tears with a new coat of paint. On one hand, this means memories have a core puzzle-oriented equivalent, and some Korok seeds are granted through small challenges instead of finding Koroks. On the other hand, this means Koroks are back. Towers are also back, with an even longer cutscene to activate them. Maybe you thought traversing an empty map and forging your own path was fun? Then how about traversing terrain where you can't even see anything? This may be a controversial opinion, but I think Nintendo took the openness a bit too far here, and I hope the 2030 game isn't as afraid to just give us stuff. but at the same time I'm scared to imagine a sequel to Tears. There's just so much here, and I can't imagine how hard the devs must have worked to make it. It feels like going even further beyond than this could potentially break the universe. I'm curious, of course, but at the same time I'm seriously concerned about their well-being, and again, deathly afraid of the end product. Because despite bringing up more bad than good here, Tears of the Kingdom is a great game for those it appeals to. Those who liked Breath will obviously get this, and I think Zelda fans who thought Breath strayed too far from the path will appreciate Tears' course correction too. However, if you hated the weapon durability or are put off by vague directions or timesync games, then maybe this isn't for you. It also retails for $70, so if you're on the fence, definitely wait for a price drop, or buy it second hand. Finally, and I'm saying this last because this and the previous points are sadly the most controversial thing I'll say here, I really like the voice acting. Everyone does a great job, and the voice direction in particular is much better than in Breath and even Age of Calamity, even if it's clear that every actor is trying to match the Japanese mouth flaps. Special shoutouts go to Patricia Somerset for really bringing Zelda's arc to life, and Matt Mercer for being such a great antagonist, his voice fitting perfectly and possibly being one of the scariest antagonists we've seen in Zelda yet. That's all from me. Thanks for watching. Please leave your Tears thoughts in the comments, and please avoid spoilers. For example, how does it compare to Breath of the Wild? And as always, have a great day. P.S. Is it just me, or are there homages to past games' dungeons in this? I'm pretty sure one sequence is meant to be an homage to two of Ocarina's. Also, the lore reveals here seem to establish this Hyrule as being in its own timeline, unless it's implying what I think it is, which is bound to make theorists go more feral than they already do.